I looked for a trial because it was so dishonest, okay, so rigged, and such a dangerous thing for our country. We have to have borders and we have to have fair elections. We have neither.
But I want to talk about the border. I want to talk about the border, but we have to
when I spoke in front of Brad Raffensperger, who again last week said I didn't do anything wrong.
Well, it sounded like you were asking for him to come up with 11,000 votes.
No, and you know that. You're terrible when you say this. You're off to a bad start because what I said was very simple. I got cheated in this election.
He told you, and
all I need is like 11,000, whatever the number was.
Brad Raffensperger, who's a Republican, said you didn't get cheated.
Well, he said that, but we have to go and see. You know, there's some court cases out there. We want to go into Fulton County and we want to see the real votes. And it's so hard.
He said they looked into it. The election had been certified 3 times.
I don't want them. I want to look into it. I would say that if we got access to the votes, which we're close to getting in court, as you know, if we got access to those votes, if we look in, you will find numbers that you wouldn't believe. More importantly, though, let me just say this.
I want to get through this, Mr. President.
Kristen, you have to just hear me out for 1 second.
Foreign policy section.
We had, because you say something and then you want to go into the next subject. We had many people in the line. When I said, I spoke for an hour, I knew that many people were in the line. I knew that it was I happen to be a really smart person. Who is going to be talking badly when I have lawyers and many other people on the line? Nobody's going to say something bad. But if it was bad, why didn't they say, sir, that was very inappropriate of you to say? Nobody said that. Nobody said, sir. It was only a long time after the call that somebody said, oh, maybe he said something wrong.
They said, sir, there's no evidence.
This is a hoax, just like Russia, just like Ukraine. There's a hoax. Let me tell you, I spoke to them on the phone, and it was left, I think, something to the effect, okay, we'll get together tomorrow. Nobody said, sir, you shouldn't speak. If I said something incorrect, one of the lawyers for the state of Georgia, which I love, one of those lawyers would have said, sir, you have to take that back. That's an inappropriate statement.
The Republican Secretary of State said there was no evidence to fraud. He said he'd looked into it. The election had been certified 3 times when you made that call.
You're talking about a different subject. If I said something wrong on the call, he or one of his many lawyers that were on the call would have said, it's inappropriate what you just said. Nobody said that. We had a normal phone call.
They said there's no evidence of fraud.
He also said, I did nothing wrong last week.
Do you have any regrets about that call?
No.
Whatsoever?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
I called to complain about an election.
Okay.
And I have every right to do that. Do you think I have a right to complain about an election?
You have a right to take your case to court, which you did 60 times?
No, I didn't do 60 times. They wouldn't hear it based on all sorts of crazy, they wouldn't hear. We never got a trial. Judges would look at stuff and say, I'm not getting involved. They didn't want to get involved.
Let's keep moving so we get through.
If you take a look at the evidence, we have so much evidence. If you take a look at the evidence, even you I could convince.
You were going to hold that press conference, but you never did with the evidence.
No, because I'm using it in my court case instead.
Okay. I want to ask you about the case related to Mar-a-Lago. A new charge suggests you asked a staffer to delete security camera footage so it wouldn't get into the hands of investigators. Did you do that? It's false.
But let me tell you what.
Would you testify to that under oath?
I'll testify.
You testify to that under oath?
It's a fake charge by this deranged lunatic prosecutor who lost in the Supreme Court 9-0, and he tried to destroy lots of lives. He's a lunatic. So it's a fake charge. But more importantly, the tapes weren't deleted. In other words, there was nothing done to them. And they were my tapes. I could have fought them. I didn't even have to give them the tapes, I don't think. I think I would have won in court. When they asked for the tapes, I said, sure, they're my tapes. I could have fought them. I didn't even have to give them. Just so you understand, though, we didn't delete anything. Nothing was deleted.
So that's false. The people who testified.
Number one, the statement is false. Much more importantly, when the tapes came, and everybody says this, they weren't deleted. We gave them 100%.
Okay.
And just so you know, I offered them. I said, if you want to look at tapes, you can look at them.
Let's move on to January 6th and the allegations that you tried to subvert the election. And again, I just want to give you a chance to talk about this because voters want to hear about this. The most senior lawyers in your own administration and on your campaign told you that after you'd lost more than 60 legal challenges, that it was over. Why did you ignore them and decide to listen to a new outside group?
Because I didn't respect them.
You'd
as
hired them.
lawyers. Sure, but that doesn't mean, you hire them. You never met these people. You get a recommendation. They turn out to be rhinos, or they turn out to be not so good. In many cases, I didn't respect them. But I did respect others. I respected many others that said the election was rigged. Look, we have many people, and it's my choice. I happen to know that the election was rigged. Okay, I know it because I have there's so much proof of ballot stuffing. It's amazing. Right just a little while ago, in terms of the modern history, where the 51 intelligence agents said very specifically they lied. They all lied. And they said about the laptop that it was Russia disinformation. That was a lie. That had a huge impact on the election. In fact, the pollsters say over 10 points. I didn't need 10 points. I needed 1/10 of a point. If you take a look at the Twitter files with the FBI and Twitter dealing, that had a huge impact on the election. Just those things. But in addition to that, you have ballot stuffing, you have a lot of
When
other
you say you needed 1/10 of a point, you needed 1/10 of a point.
I needed a very small.
To win?
I think somebody said 22,000 votes.
To win?
Yeah. If you divided among the states, it was 22,000 votes, something to that effect. Yeah.
To win the election?
Yeah, if I would have had another 22,000 votes over the whole. But look, they rigged the election. If you look at Pennsylvania,
but Mr. President, you're saying you needed more votes to win the election. Are you acknowledging you didn't win?
If you look at all of the statistics, all of the votes, they say 22,000 votes, over millions and millions of votes, 22,000 votes. So when they do Twitter files, or when they have 51 intelligence agents come out and lie that the laptop from hell was Russia disinformation, and now they find out it's not. But they knew that at the time. They cheated on the election in that way, too.
I just want to be clear, though. Are you saying you needed those votes in order to win? Are you acknowledging you didn't win?
I'm not acknowledging. No, I say I won the election.
Okay. Even though, again, your lawyers told you you did not.
No.
Did you? Just let me understand.
Some people told me that,
okay.
But many people told me the opposite.
You called some of your outside lawyers. You said they had crazy theories. Why were you listening to them? Were you listening to them because they were telling you what you wanted to hear?
You know who I listened to myself? I saw what happened. I watched that election, and I thought the election was over at 10 o'clock in the evening.
You were listening to your instincts.
My instincts are a big part of it. That's been the thing that's gotten me to where I am, my instincts. But I also listen to people. There are many lawyers. I could give you many books. There are books that are written on how the election was rigged. There are numerous books that were written on how the election was rigged.
Just to be clear, were you listening to your lawyer's advice, or were you listening to your own instincts?
I was listening to different people, and when I added it all up, the election was rigged. There are books
that are written.
Were you calling
the shots, though?
In fact, Molly Hemingway wrote a great book.
But were you
called
calling
Rigged.
the shots ultimately?
Excuse me. Molly Hemingway, who's highly respected and great, she wrote a book, a best-selling book called Rigged.
When you buy 10 tickets on Vivid Seats, you get the 11th ticket free. I wonder what my 11th will be.
Were you calling the shots, though, Mr. President, ultimately?
As to whether or not I believed it was rigged, oh, sure. It was my decision, but I listened to some people. Some people said that. Like guys like Bill Barr, he was a stiff, but he wasn't there at the time. But he didn't do his job because he was afraid. You know what he was afraid of? He was afraid of being impeached. He was petrified to be impeached. And how do you not get impeached? Don't do anything.
We've heard so much, Mr. President, about that day, the actual day of January 6th, from other people. Yeah. But quite frankly, we haven't heard from you about your own perceptions of how that day unfolded. Sure. We've heard you talk about the rally. And I'm curious about what happened when you got back to the White House. I know you spent most of the day in the dining room. What were you doing in there? How were you watching it unfold?
So let me just tell you about January 6th. First of all, I had very little to do with January 6th. I was asked to speak. And I was the President of the United States. I'm allowed to do that. But I was asked to speak. Other groups, I think it was women's groups, a lot of people were involved in that. And it was incredible. It was incredible. It was, I think, the largest group I've ever spoken. You never see that. You never see pictures of the group that I was speaking to. I think it was the most people, and I've spoken to some very large groups. Hundreds of thousands of people were there, and it was a beautiful, beautiful sight. But just so you understand, I went and I spoke. And by the way, peacefully and patriotically, and all of that which wasn't reported, But when I spoke, I have had senators go up. They said, I've never heard you speak so moderately. You were very moderate.
What happened when you got back to the White House?
Well,
then,
wait,
Mr.
let me
President?
just say. So I spoke, and then I went back. I wanted to go down peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol. Secret Service, who I have great respect for, said, sir, it's better if you don't do that. It could be unsafe. Because they didn't mean because of riots, because, it takes one guy with bad intentions, okay? So I didn't have a dispute with them. You had that one person said, I grabbed the man around the neck. Actually, I wish I was so strong to be able to do that. These are all tough guys, smart guys.
To dispute that account.
Dispute it? Who wouldn't dispute it? She's the craziest account I've ever heard. You mean that I was in the Beast, and she said I was in the Beast, and the Secret Service didn't win. So I took a guy who was like a black belt in karate and grabbed his neck and tried to choke him.
What happened?
How ridiculous. Just so you understand, and I have great respect for Secret Service, by the way. They're fantastic. The Secret Service said, sir, it would be better if you didn't. I said, I'd love to do it. They said it would be better until we went back to the White House. Just so you understand, I spoke. I made a very nice speech. I wasn't Maxine Waters that calls for people's death and some of these. Take a look at it. It would be better until we went back to this. And I have great respect for his neck and tried to. I was in the Beast. She's the craziest account I've ever. Dispute it? Who wouldn't dispute it? She's the craziest account I've ever heard. You mean that I was in the Beast, and she said I was in the Beast, and the Secret Service didn't win. So I took a guy who was like a black belt in karate and grabbed his neck and tried to choke him.
What happened?
How ridiculous. Just so you understand, and I have great respect for Secret Service, by the way. They're fantastic. The Secret Service said, sir, it would be better if you didn't. I said, I'd love to do it. They said it would be better until we went back to the White House. Just so you understand, I spoke. I made a very nice speech. I wasn't Maxine Waters that calls for people's death and some of these. Take a look at what these other people say.
What happened
it's
when
so
you got
ridiculous.
to the White House, though? Where did you watch all of the events unfold?
Much more importantly, I offered 2 days before, 2 or 3 days before, 10,000 soldiers, right? And they were going to go because everybody was telling me, I knew it was going to be big in terms of the crowd, because everybody I spoke to said, hey, I'm going down on January 6th. I'm going down. I'm going to listen to your speech, et cetera. And there were other speakers. I wasn't the only speaker. There were many speakers. But wait a minute. I offered 10,000 people to the mayor of Washington, D.C., Nancy Pelosi, both of them, Nancy Pelosi, and to the mayor of Washington. And they turned it down flat. And the police commissioner was very nasty about it to her. And he testified. And here's what happened. The January 6th unselect committee of thugs and horrible people, the unselect committee destroyed all the evidence.
They say they didn't do that. We did ask them. We did ask the January 6th committee.
Well, they announced that they destroyed and deleted most of the evidence.
They say some of the evidence is still under review. I want to know what.
Wait.
I want to know about your perspective, Mr. President.
Kristen,
I want to
they
ask
put out
about
an
you,
announcement that they destroyed the evidence, and they destroyed all the stuff having to do with Nancy Pelosi, and they wouldn't let her testify. We said, why isn't she testifying? You know, it was a whole rigged deal. Why isn't she testifying? I offered them 10,000 soldiers. She turned them.
I want to know
you
what
know that
you
she's in
did
charge
on
of
that
security.
day. I want to know. You're the president of the United States, though.
She's in charge of
Tell me
security.
how you watched this all unfold. Were you in the dining room watching TV?
I'm not going to tell you. I'll tell people later at an appropriate time. Just so you understand, however.
What did you
And
do
I
when
made
the
beautiful
Capitol was
statements.
under attack, though?
Let me
Mr.
just tell
President?
you.
In the moment that the Capitol
Did you
was
see
under
the
attack.
statements I made in the Oval Office and just outside of the Oval Office?
Absolutely. I
Go
was there
home.
that day.
Our police are great. We love our police. We love everybody. Go home.
This was
a beautiful
that was
statement.
at 4
Well,
o'clock
that
in the
statement was
afternoon,
made-
more than
I don't know.
3
But
hours after the
But there
attack
were tweets
started,
that were
Mr.
put out
President.
before that.
I want to know who you
By the
called
way,
on that day.
Nancy Pelosi.
I wanna
don't
talk
have.
about
Why
that
would
day.
I tell you that? Listen,
don't wanna
Nancy
talk about
Pelosi
that?
was in charge of security. She turned down 10,000 soldiers. If she didn't turn down the soldiers, you wouldn't have had January 6th.
Did you call military or law enforcement?
What?
Did you call military or law enforcement at the moment the Capitol
I'm
was
not going
under
to
attack?
tell you anything. Let me put it this way. I behaved so well. I did such a good job. Nancy Pelosi turned down 10,000 soldiers. If she didn't do that,
But
and now
Nancy
I understand.
Pelosi doesn't have
I
the authority
understand
that
the
you
police
have as
testified
commander in
against.
chief, though.
Listen to me, Kristen. Listen to me. I understand that the police testified against her, the chief very strongly against her, Capitol Police, great people. They testified against her, and they burned all the evidence, Okay, they burned all the evidence.
Mr.
They
President,
destroyed all the evidence about Nancy Pelosi.
what do you say to people who wonder why you as commander-in-chief, you have authorities that Nancy Pelosi doesn't have as commander-in-chief?
No, she has authority over
Why
the
didn't
Capitol.
you send help in that moment, though?
Frankly, just so you understand, I assumed that she took care of it. She turned down.
So when you realized that the National Guard wasn't coming?
Well, you don't realize
coming?
anything until quite a while. National Guard not coming. I asked it to be there 3 days in advance, and she turned it down.
She says that request was never officially made.
Oh,
just
stop
so
it.
you know.
Let me just tell you.
Let me ask you
The
about
mayor of
pardons,
let me
Mr.
tell you.
President.
The mayor of D.C. gave us a letter saying that she turns it down. Okay, we have it. Nancy Pelosi also was asked, and she turned it down. The police commissioner
I'm talking about
Capitol
the day
Police,
of, though.
wait a minute.
Yep.
Capitol Police said that he wanted it, and Nancy Pelosi wouldn't accept it. She's responsible for January 6th.
Mr. President.
Nancy Pelosi's responsible.
Mr. President, you're the president, though. You
refused to interview
You have
her.
authorities that no one else has as the commander-in-chief. Do you think you showed leadership on that day?
Yes, absolutely, I did.
Okay.
And I showed calm. Nancy Pelosi is responsible for the security, and she did a terrible job.
Looking
and by the way,
forward,
from what I understand, they burned all the evidence.
Okay. She says she never got an official request. They say they didn't, but that's what you're saying.
Really?
Let's talk about.
And her daughter taping her. Her daughter happened to be a documentary.
Let's talk about potential
a documentary
pardons.
worker just happened to be there taping her at the time.
Let's talk about potential pardons, because a lot of your supporters are wondering about that. Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years in jail. Now that you know what the sentence is, 22 years in jail, will you give him a pardon? Will you give other Proud Boys a pardon?
I don't know him. I never met him. I never heard of him until I started reading this stuff.
Will you pardon him?
But I want to tell you, he and other people have been treated horribly. Antifa kills people, and those guys didn't even get tried in many cases.
There's no
They put these guys in jail for 17, 18, and 22 years. They didn't kill anybody. Some of them never even went into the Capitol. Some of them weren't even in D.C., and they got a 22 or a 17-year sentence. 16, 18,
more than 1,000
15,
people.
22. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Yeah, 1,000 people. How many people, let me ask you this, how many people were charged for destroying Portland? How many people were charged for burning down the police precinct and the courthouse?
Will you pardon him, though? Will you pardon him?
In Minneapolis. I'd certainly look at it. I'd look at that, and I'd look at all the other people that have suffered, the J6 people.
Mr. President, let me ask you one final question, then let's move on to foreign policy.
That didn't even go into the building have suffered gravely. And you have to say one system of justice, right? You take a look at what's gone on in Portland.
No living being should ever eat processed food for every single meal of their life.
Mr. President, everybody is on the line, and just so, this is Mark Meadows, the Chief of Staff, just so we all are aware, on the line is Secretary of State and two other individuals, Jordan and Mr. Germany. With him, you also have the attorneys that represent the President, Kurt and Alex, and Cleta Mitchell, who is not the attorney of record but has been involved, myself, and then the President. So, Mr. President, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, Brad and Ryan and everybody. We appreciate the time and the call. So we've spent a lot of time on this, and if we could just go over some of the numbers, I think it's pretty clear that we won. We won very substantially, Georgia. You even see it by rally size, frankly. We'd be getting 25,000, 30,000 people a rally, and the competition would get less than 100 people, and it never made sense. But we have a number of things. We have at least two or three, anywhere from 250 to 300,000 ballots were dropped mysteriously into the rolls. Much of that had to do with Fulton County, which hasn't been checked. We think that if you check the signatures, a real check of the signatures going back in Fulton County, you'll find at least a couple of 100,000 of forged signatures of people with who have been forged, and we are quite sure that's going to happen. Another tremendous number. We're going to have an accurate number over the next 2 days with certified accountants, but an accurate number will be given, but it's in the 50s of thousands, and that's people that went to vote and they were told they can't vote because they've already been voted for, and it's a very sad thing. They walked out complaining, but the number is large. We'll have it for you, but it's much more than the number of 11,779. That's the current margin is only 11,779. Brad, I think you agree with that, right? That's something I think everyone, at least that's a number that everyone agrees on. But that's the difference in the votes. But we've had hundreds of thousands of ballots that we're able to actually. We'll get you a pretty accurate number. You don't need much of a number because the number that, in theory, I lost by the margin would be 11,779. But you also have substantial numbers of people, thousands and thousands, who went to the voting place on November 3rd, were told they couldn't vote. Were told they couldn't vote because a ballot had been put in on their name. And, that's very, 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 very sad. We had, I believe it's about 4,502 voters who voted, but who weren't on the voter registration list. So it's 4,502 who voted, but they were not on the voter registration roll, which they had to be. You had 18,325 vacant address voters. The address was vacant, and they're not allowed to be counted. That's 18,325. Smaller number, you had 904 who only voted where they had just a PO, a post office box number. And they had a post office box number, and that's not allowed. We had at least 18,000, that's on tape. We had them counted very painstakingly. 18,000 voters having to do with Ruby Freeman. She's a vote scammer, a professional vote scammer and hustler. Ruby Freeman. That was the tape that's been shown all over the world that makes everybody look bad. You, me, and everybody else. Where they got number one, they said very clearly, and it's been reported that they said there was a major water main break. Everybody fled the area, and then they came back. Ruby Freeman, her daughter, and a few people. There were no Republican poll watchers. Actually, there were no Democrat poll watchers. I guess they were them. But there were no Democrats either, and there was no law enforcement. Early in the morning, they went to the table with the black robe, the black shield, and they pulled out the votes. Those votes were put there a number of hours before. The table was put there. I think it was, Brad, you would know, it was probably 8 hours or 7 hours before, and then it was stuffed with votes. They weren't in an official voter box. They were in what looked to be suitcases or trunks, suitcases, but they weren't in voter boxes. The minimum number it could be, because we watched it and they watched it certified in slow motion, instant replay, if you can believe it, but it had slow motion and it was magnified many times over. And the minimum it was 18,000 ballots, all for Biden. You had out-of-state voters. They voted in Georgia, but they were from out of state, of 4,925. You had absentee ballot sent to vacant. They were absentee ballots sent to vacant addresses. They had nothing on them about addresses. That's 2,326. And you had drop boxes, which was very bad. you had boxes that were picked up. We have photographs, and we have affidavits from many people. I don't know if you saw the hearings, but you have drop boxes where the box was picked up and not delivered for 3 days. So all sorts of things could have happened to that box, including, putting in the votes that you wanted. So there are many infractions, and the bottom line is many, many times the 11,779 margin that they said we lost by. We had the state is in turmoil over this, and I know you would like to get to the bottom of it, although I saw you on television today and you said that you found nothing wrong. I didn't lose the state, Brett. People have been saying that it was the highest vote ever. There was no way. A lot of the political people said that there's no way they beat me, and they beat me. They beat me in the poll. As you know, every single state, we won every state. We won every state house in the country. We held the Senate, which is shocking to people, although we'll see what happens tomorrow or in a few days. And we won the House, but we won every single state house. And we won Congress, which was supposed to lose 15 seats, and they gained, I think, 16 or 17 or something. I think there's now a difference of 5. There was supposed to be a difference substantially more. But politicians in every state, but politicians in Georgia have given affidavits and are going to that there was no way they beat me in the election, that the people came out. In fact, they were expecting to lose, and they ended up winning by a lot because of the coattails. And they said there's no way that they've done many polls prior to the election. There was no way that they won. Ballots were dropped in massive numbers, and we're trying to get to those numbers, and we will have them. They'll take a period of time, certified. But they're massive numbers, and far greater than the 11,779. The other thing, dead people. So dead people voted, and I think the number is in close to 5,000 people. And they went to obituaries. They went to all sorts of methods to come up with an accurate number, and a minimum is close to about 5,000 voters. The bottom line is when you add it all up, and then you start adding, 300,000.
Lord's vibe is so good. Lord's vibe is so good.
I've been watching sleep. I haven't sing a song that you are. I can't sleep when I wake up. I will start to drown in my sorrow. I will wake up for the day. can't creep. Huh? Oh. Yeah.
Lord's God is so good.
I can't feel my dreams all in. Fuck it up. You good, right? See you in my dreams. I've been. That's pretty good. See you in my dreams.
Lord's God is so good.
See you in my dreams. All in my apologies. I can't sleep watching me face down a bottom of midnight I walk out in my brain, wake up without nobody there. I feel it haunting me. Kick back, myself in my favorite chair. We all came to party. We all came to see me fall me in my sleep. Wake up when I'm here again. I can't dream of when the day that we first met. Even better, I can't wait right here for you. I wanna follow, walk away as fast as you can. What you think? Want to do another take? Oh, walk away, my thing. I can't in the way I should overtake it. I've been feeling blacked out like the basement. You got me forsaken. I think that I'm racing to the other side, to the other side of your eye. I want to wipe out of my body. I cannot feel nothing. I can't be on the side of me, baby. I'm headed way out there. Wake me up on set again. I need another sedative. I think I see it setting in. I think that I'm unsettling to you. You want to wake up with someone else. Well, what does that mean? Should it be my spirit? Oh, what that mean? I'm sorry for getting ahead of us, for getting ahead of you, for figuring out what's new. I said it, I'm sorry for giving up all the hope, for coming on too strong, for fucking grabbing the rope and hanging on it like a thread. you fucking bouncing ass. Terrible. Oh, way out. Still for the way out. I want to play. I can't get way down. I want to play. Not feeling this. I'm not feeling this one. Try, break apart. I first swear I would die. No, I'm not feeling it, bro. This fucking beat ain't it. Okay, Chuck? Okay, Chuck? The key is not right. All my friends are dead. the first part and load it up. That riff in there is weird, right? Oh no, what do you think? It feels like two different things are going on at the same time, like one in the opposite direction. Like this feels grungy. I don't know about that last chord, but then that is just too dark.